The sixth special session of Imina 37 na Legislature in Guam is called to order. Majority Leader Senator Shelton, you are recognized.
Assiduous Masi, Madam Speaker, Hafiday colleagues. Notwithstanding the rules, I move to adopt today's sixth special session agenda, March 8th, 2024.
There's a motion made to adopt the special session agenda. Are there any objections? Seeing no objection, motion carries. Majority Leader, you are recognized.
Assiduous Masi, Madam Speaker, and notwithstanding the House rules, I move to waive special session agenda items 2 through 6, the prayer, recognition of a recipient of Imiladzen Mastakuluna Sacrificial, reciting of the Inafresi, singing of the Guam hymn in Chamorro, and singing of the national anthem.
On that motion to waive those agenda items, is there any objection? Seeing no objection, motion carries. We're now on roll call. Clerk, please take the roll call.
Senator Barnett, Senator Blas, Senator Brown, Senator Duenas, Senator Fisher, Senator Lujan, Vice Speaker Munya Barnes, Senator Parkinson, Senator Perez, Senator Kanata, Senator San Augustine, Senator Siniclis, Senator Shelton, Senator Titagli, Speaker Terlahi. Madam Speaker, there is a quorum.
Assiduous Masi. Clerk. Majority Leader, you are recognized.
Assiduous Masi, Madam Speaker, I move to approve the Legislative Journal dated December 14th, 2023 from the 5th special session, subject to corrections.
On that motion to approve the journal from the previous special session, is there any objection? Seeing no objection, motion carries. Majority Leader, you are recognized.
Assiduous Masi, Madam Speaker, notwithstanding the House rules, I move to waive special session agenda item 9, communications and petitions.
On that motion to waive communications and petition, is there any objection? Seeing no objection, motion carries. Majority Leader, you are recognized.
Assiduous Masi, Madam Speaker, I would like to advise the members of the message from Imagahagan Guahan specific to the call to special session and move that the message from Imagahagan Guahan be appended to today's special session journal.
On the motion to append the message to today's journal, is there any objection? Seeing no objection, that motion carries. And if there are no objections, Senators, our Majority Leader will read the message from Imagahagan Guahan. Majority Leader, you are recognized.
Assiduous Masi, Madam Speaker. Transmitted via email to the Speaker, the Honorable Therese M. Terlahi, regarding 37th Guam Legislature 6th Special Session. Hafiday, Madam Speaker. Last week, Attorney General of Guam, Douglas B. Moylan, notified 22 Government of Guam agencies that he was withdrawing from representing their departments and refusing to sign their documents, including contracts for critical services, effective immediately. In consideration of the foregoing and pursuant to Section 1423H of the Organic Act of Guam, I hereby call a special session of the Legislature in Guahan to take place Friday, March 8, 2024 at 1 p.m. at the Speaker Antonio R. M. Pinco Legislative Session Hall within the Guam Congress Building. I call this special session for the sole purpose of the 37th Guam Legislature's consideration and vote upon the measures attached hereto. Bill 237-37, as introduced, the proposed substitute Bill number 254-37, and the proposed substitute Bill number 255-37, to be considered and voted on in this order, which I believe the public interest requires, Sinceramente Lourdes A. Leon Guerrero, Magahagan Guahan, Governor of Guam.
Tsuzus Masi, Majority Leader. You are recognized on item number 10. Or sorry, item number 11.
Seduus Masi. Madam Speaker, notwithstanding the House rules, I move to waive special session agenda items 11 through 13, reports of standing committees, reports of select committees, introduction and first reading of bills and resolutions.
On that motion to waive those items, is there any objection? Seeing no objection, motion carries. We are now on motions. Are there any motions? Majority Leader, you're recognized.
Seduus Masi. Madam Speaker, I move to excuse senators not present for today's legislative session.
On the motion to excuse senators not present, is there any objection? Seeing no objection, motion carries. Any other motions? Majority Leader, you are recognized.
Seduus Masi. Madam Speaker, notwithstanding the House rules, I move to place on the special session agenda Bill number 237-37 COR, introduced by Senator Sabina Flores Perez, an act to amend Section 5150 of Subarticle F, Article 2, Chapter 5, Division 1, Title 5, Guam Code Annotated, relative to updating the duties of the Attorney General by increasing the threshold for procurement oversight and advisement to $1 million or more.
On that motion to place that item onto our special session agenda, is there any objection? Seeing no objection, motion carries. Majority Leader, you are recognized.
Seduus Masi. Madam Speaker, notwithstanding the House rules, I move to place on the special session agenda item Bill number 254-37 COR, introduced by myself, Senator Amanda L. Shelton, an act to amend Section 5150 of Subarticle F, Article 2, Chapter 5, Title 5, Guam Code Annotated, relative to providing for procurement-related legal services in the absence of the Office of the Attorney General of Guam, as substituted on the floor.
All right. The issue that we're having with the clerk is that the bills never received a vote to be substituted on the floor, but that is what the governor has cited in her message, is the bills as substituted on the floor. Those were drafts waiting to be substituted on the floor, but we did not go back to motions yesterday. So the motion before us right now is to add the bills as introduced. Bill number 254-37 COR. Is there any objection to adding that to the agenda? Senator Taitigui, you object. All right. All in favor of placing the bill on the agenda, please raise your hand.
Madam Speaker, just as a point of clarification.
Point of order?
Right, on a point of order, based on the letter that was provided to us from the governor, it states that we have to follow the ruling on this matter as given. So we have with us the copies that was transmitted and put on and that bill specifically states 254 as substituted on the floor. So I just want to make sure that all my colleagues have that same bill, because that's what we need to entertain based on what has been submitted by the Magahagan Guahan. So I just want to make that clarification, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Vice Speaker. I agree that we need to address, or we are directed to address the measures that the governor has sent to us. I just think the reference to them as substituted on the floor is inaccurate, so we will have to fix that sometime. But we need to clarify our motion so that there's no confusion if there's confusion. Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, if I may, on a point of information based... Oh, what is that?
Majority Leader, you're recognized.
Assiduous Masi, Madam Speaker, notwithstanding the House rules, I move to place Bill number 254-37 COR as substituted on the floor, introduced by myself, Amanda L. Shelton, an act to amend Section 22601 of Article 6, Chapter 22, Division 2, Title 5, Guam Code Annotated, and to amend Section 5118, Section 512A, and Section 5121B, Section 5150, Section 5151A, Section 5425G1, all of Chapter 5, Division 1, Title 5, Guam Code Annotated, relative to the review and approval of contracts and other procurement actions by the Attorney General.
Thank you, Majority Leader. On advice of counsel, I'm going to suggest we bifurcate that motion and that we accept a motion first to substitute Bill number 254. It's the only way we're going to get from the original bill to the proposed substitute bill, which is not yet on our website or any of, and so that way it could be, we can follow the numbering system if you accept that motion to first substitute the bill and then place that substitute bill on.
I move to accept Bill number 254-37 COR as substituted on the floor. The title which I just read.
All right, there's an objection to accepting the substitute bill. All in favor of accepting the substitute bill for 254, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Motion carries. So 254 is substituted on the floor. Majority Leader, you are recognized.
Assiduous Masi, Madam Speaker, I move to place Bill number 254-37 COR as substituted on the floor onto the session agenda, notwithstanding the rules.
On that motion, there's an objection. All in favor, please raise your hand. Motion carries. Majority Leader, you are recognized.
Assiduous Masi, Madam Speaker, I move to accept Bill number 255-37 COR as substituted on the floor, introduced by Speaker Teresa M. Terlahi, an act to authorize the governor of Guam to temporarily appoint a legal officer on behalf of the government of Guam.
On that motion to accept the substitute version of 255, is there any objection? Senator Taitigui?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, do we bifurcate this one too as well?
Yes. So I'm calling for on the motion to accept the substitute version
Okay, thank you.
right now. So is there any objection to accepting the substitute version? If not, motion carries. Majority Leader, you're recognized.
Sedus Masi, Madam Speaker, notwithstanding the rules, I move to place Bill number 255-37 COR as substituted on the floor on the session agenda.
On that motion to place the bill as substituted onto the agenda, is there any objection? Seeing no objection, motion carries. All right, we're still on motions. Is there any other motion? If not, I'm going to take a 1-minute recess to allow our clerks to upload these to someplace on our website so that those in the public who are following along are going to be able to find these versions of the bills that we're discussing. So we'll take maybe a 5-minute recess. We're back from recess. Thank you for your patience. The bills as substituted are now uploaded to the legislature's website, so the public can follow along with what we are doing in here today on this special session. All right, we are now on our agenda on item number 15. Majority Leader, you are recognized.
Suggest Masi, Madam Speaker, notwithstanding the House rules, I move to waive legislative agenda items 15, legislative concurrence, and 16, consent calendar.
On that motion to waive legislative concurrence and consent calendar, there are no items. Is there any objection? Seeing no objection, motion carries. So we now proceeded in our agenda to second reading file. The first bill on the second reading file is bill number 237-37 COR. Senator Perez, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This bill was introduced. The intention of this bill was to assist in somehow streamlining the process.
Wait, I'm sorry, Senator. I'm going to read the title or ask you to read the title just so that everyone who's following knows what we're talking about.
Okay, yeah. So this bill is bill number 237-37, sponsored by myself. It's an act to amend Section 5150 of Subarticle F, Article 2, Chapter 5, Division 1, Title 5 Guam Code annotated relative to updating the duties of the Attorney General by increasing the threshold for procurement oversight and advisement to $1 million or more. Okay, so the intention of this bill was to help to address or alleviate the bottleneck that was occurring in the AG's office. This is before, current events took place. So one of the things is that the threshold has not been updated since about 2010. And so when we did the calculations for inflation, it would bring it up to about $700,000. And so the $1 million, the rationale for the $1 million was to put it in line with the governing board, such as the CCU or the PUC, that is. So the PUC oversees all procurements that are $1 million or more. And so that was the initial, the thought behind increasing this threshold. Since it was introduced and since it had its public hearing, and since we had our committee of the whole yesterday, it appears that the Attorney General does not support this. And I think too, because if there's a lot of things that need to take place before we start lifting a threshold, I think one of the main issues with procurement is the training, the need for training, and from the beginner even to the practitioner. It's from my experience that even these experts that we view as experts really actually could use a little bit more training. I think this is the problem. To raise the threshold may be premature at this time until we can fix the issues, specifically with procurement training. And this is one of the things the public auditor even recognized, that, with the implementation of 5141, which was the requirement of training for procurement professionals, it helped to reduce the amount of appeals. And so I don't think we have gone far enough with this initiative. So at this time, my intention is to refer this back to committee. Suggest Masi.
Is that a motion, Senator?
I guess I wouldn't have to motion to go back to motion for that. No? Okay. I would like to motion to refer this back to committee.
All right. There's been a motion to refer the bill 237-37 COR back to the committee. Is there an objection? There's an objection. All in favor, please raise your hand.
Madam Speaker, got a simple question. Point of inquiry.
Please state your point of inquiry.
The three bills that we're entertaining today is not something that we drafted and adopted. This is something that came from the governor's office saying to entertain. Either we entertain it or we don't. That's how we should be treating it. It's not to return to committee.
That is entertaining the bill. Any motion is available to us as in regular session. There's a motion again. Senator Barnett, is that a point of inquiry or point of?
I just wanted to rise on a point of information, ma'am. We had the AG in here over a couple days, and this issue of approving the procurements above $500,000 was not part of this so-called crisis, ma'am, and I think that it'd be reckless for us to pursue with the bill. It is true the governor sent it down as part of the agenda, but I think dispensing with it also means we acted on it, ma'am. So I just advise the body to act with caution and, please heed the words of the bill's
Thank
author.
you, Senator
Thank you.
Barnett. Senator Fisher,
Yes.
what is your point, Senator?
Yes. Thank you, ma'am. I don't see how we could have the ability.
Is this a point of...
yeah, a point of inquiry, ma'am. Where do we have, the governor has sent this down pursuant to her Organic Act authority.
Yes, that's correct.
Where,
It's on our agenda, and now we are subject to motions.
yeah, thank you. But where do we get the authority? It functionally is not our bill. It's not this good senator's bill anymore. This is the governor's bill. We have no authority to withdraw it or send it back to committee. This is a constitutional ability of the governor to send the bill down. And I may be mistaken, so the point of inquiry,
Yes, thank you, Senator Fisher, for your
could-
point of inquiry.
well,
Yeah,
could-
this governor sent us a message. We have convened special session according to the Organic Act. The bills are now within our session. It is the legislature's prerogative to act on these measures as it sees fit. The legislature cannot go beyond the business specified in the call for special session, yet within such limits, it can act freely, in whole or in part, or not at all. So there is a motion, and all the motions in regular session apply to this special session center. Those are all in the standing rules. So if there is a motion, is there any objection? The motion is to refer the bill back to the committee. Is there an objection? There's an objection. All in favor, please raise your hand. Motion fails. Senator Perez, you're still recognized.
Sorry. What was that? Set it aside?
All right. On the bill, Senator Barnett, you're recognized. Or who on the bill? Is there anyone who'd like to speak on the bill? Legislative Secretary. I'm sorry. Is there any other person who'd like to speak on the bill? Senator Blas, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, just so that it's clear, we're talking about Bill 237-37 COR.
Sir.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I'm looking at the governor's letter that calls us into session. And it calls us into session because the Attorney General of Guam notified 22 government and Guam agencies that he was withdrawing from representing their departments and refusing to sign their documents, including contracts, for critical services effective immediately. because I see the reason why we were called into service, and I look at the title of the bill. It doesn't match. And I don't think that entertaining the bill, or the bill, is germane to the discussion and to the reason why we're called into session. So therefore, Madam Speaker, I'd like to make a motion to move this bill back to committee. For the purposes of it doesn't fit the purpose as to why we're going into special session.
On that motion, is there any objection? Seeing no objection? Is there an objection? I can't see. Please raise your hand if you have an objection, or I can't recognize it. It can't hear. Is there an objection?
Madam Speaker,
yes.
Wasn't that posed before and it was objected to send it back to committee?
Yes.
And it's another request?
Yes.
Yeah, new motion.
Okay, so the objection still stands.
Is there an objection? Please raise your hand. Thank
Madam
you.
Speaker,
There's an objection.
point of information.
Yes,
The
Senator.
the point is, while there was a previous request or motion to be able to do this, my motion is based, the request of my motion was basically on a separate matter and a separate reason. And that reason is basically, if we're going to follow the letter of the law, if we're going to follow the letter of why we were brought into session by the governor, this was to address, okay, a certain aspect. It wasn't to address the threshold. We do that and we'll go outside the bounds of and I will not, that's why I object, or I motion to move it back to committee.
All right. On the motion, is there an objection? If there's an objection, please raise your hand. Is there an objection to the motion? All right. There's an objection. All in favor of the motion to refer the bill back to committee, please raise your hand. Motion fails. Would anyone like to speak on the bill? Senator Barnett, on the bill, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise in opposition of this bill. Ma'am, you know, this to me seems like an attempt to grab more power. I think that the administration is using this crisis with the Attorney General to try and grab more power, and I think with all of the issues that we're facing with procurement, procurement violations, procurement shenanigans, I don't think it's a time to increase the threshold from $500,000 to $1 million, ma'am, and I would again just caution the body from moving forward with this. Sidus Masi.
Sidus Masi, on the bill. Senator Duenas, you're recognized.
Sidus Masi, Madam Speaker. I just wanted to rise and agree with the sentiments expressed by the previous speakers to include the author. You know, we sat here with the Attorney General, and as far as I was concerned yesterday, Madam Speaker, I believe that there was adequate testimony that it wasn't necessary to entertain any of these measures, really. Now, I know there's been possibly some change with regard to some of the measures, but this one in particular, I'm sure, as the author mentioned, you know, was well intended. But then after having thought it through and the situation we're in right now is really predicated based on the Attorney General stating that his investigations of the 22 agencies now is based on the audits that the public auditor did. Those procurements, Madam Speaker, range from probably a little over $500,000 to tens of millions of dollars. So really, the caution in terms of us continuing to have to deal with this particular issue is the fact that there is no question, based on the audits, that we have significant question costs. It's one of the reasons why we're at this impasse. So, raising the threshold, in my opinion, Madam Speaker, is not addressing the issue of procurement and review. It's addressing the issue of wanting to have procurements larger, not to be reviewed by the Attorney General. I mean, this is what we cautioned against yesterday. When we didn't add the amendment in 206, which potentially could have taken the Attorney General out of the equation altogether. You're doing that now by adding 500,000 to it. You know, Madam Speaker, we've seen other sneaky things before in procurement where there are numbers that are of thresholds that are given for one procurement. And so some people get really creative and do multiple procurements just under the amount of the ceiling, which is another opportunity for mischief. We don't even know how it affects change orders sometimes from procurement. So $1 million, 500,000 is a lot of money. $1,000, $10 is a lot of money. But going up to $1 million with no review, without understanding the implications, I think is actually counter to what we're trying to accomplish when we're talking about the transparency and the accountability when it comes to spending public funds. Particularly in light, Madam Speaker, and I caution this body, because I think we're going to learn some things in the coming months, particularly in light of question costs. Because question cost, particularly when you're using federal money, guess who pays for that? When those procurements are deemed to have been done erroneous and outside of proper procurement. That is no longer Uncle Sam's responsibility, particularly when it comes to reimbursement. So I caution this body from dealing with something that is not central to the claims by the governor's office in terms of what the restrictions are causing. Thresholds is, at this point in time, just a way of saying, we're moving this to $1 million, and those procurements don't require. I don't think the people of Guam want less scrutiny. Timeframes, understandable. Debating the issue of whether or not it conflicts, understandable. But thresholds, it looks like a workaround. I don't know why this body doesn't want to allow the author of the bill to move it back to committee. We have other bills here that actually deal with the issue. So I raised those issues out of a sense of extreme caution, Madam Speaker. And if this bill makes it to the third reading file, I'll be voting against it. Jesus Masi.
Jesus Masi, Senator. On the bill, Senator Brown, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I also agree that putting this bill on the agenda really is not connected to the primary reason. I assume the governor decided to call us in. I guess just because she can. But of course, it doesn't mean we have to do anything that she desires. You know, that deliberation happens here. I mean, we can dispense with these bills. We can take no action on these bills. We can vote them up and we can vote them down. I'm just a little concerned if some of our colleagues are so quick to abdicate our responsibilities here at the legislature. I didn't know we worked for Adelup. I don't work for Adelup. Our job here is to ensure the interest of the public is represented. And I think we need to deliberate that. I think when the fact that the very author of this bill, who had a public hearing held on this bill, relays to us that there are issues that she needs and would like to have addressed before this bill moves forward to be entertained on this body, that should be considered, as if anyone here chose to do that with a bill that they introduced. On top of that, we simply want to change the requirement and increase the amount by another, literally 100% is what we're talking about, from 500,000 to $1 million, without that level of review. My goodness, audit report after audit report. Who can argue our good public auditor is not a friend of many here? He continues to bring up these issues of concerns of improper procurement in the government of Guam. And what are we doing about it? Sad to say, there's a lot of abuse in this government, either intentional or because the people procuring don't know the proper procedures and are not following the proper procedures. Let's not kid ourselves. This is not our individual money, this is the people's money. And some of us are just so quick to spend it and throw it to the wind like, oh, look at me. Ain't I important? I'm in charge of the budget of the government of Guam. How are we ensuring that accountability? You know, legitimate concern was raised. Do we have enough of our people properly trained in procurement? We see time and time again missteps that have been taken in the procurement process. Actually, you know, sometimes the intent is there from the very beginning on who's going to be the favored vendor. Like $1 million is nothing. How many people in here have $1 million in their bank account? 1, maybe 2, 3? How casual we are. Especially at a time when you see continued abuse in this government. We can already determine in some areas who and when and who's going to be the favored vendor. We just got to arrange it that way so they get it. And I agree with, you know, Senator Chris, the previous speaker here, with regards to ensuring more accountability. That's what we should be moving towards, because it's not our individual money. What you choose to do with your own money is your business. As long as it's a legal purchase, more power to you. Do with it as you will. But when we're here with the people's money, when there are so many needs in this community that are not being met with the people's money to benefit the people, we shouldn't be so casual with how we review the expenditures of those funds. Just because we can, because we want to carry our buckets of water for the hill up there. Like I said, colleagues, if you want to go work for Adelup, step down and go work there. They'll pay you $30,000 to $40,000 more, maybe even $50,000. Then you don't have to make any excuses that you're here to represent the interests of the people. My dear people of Guam, as we so say with such ease, but when the time comes to make the right decision, oh my goodness, what does the governor want? We want to know what the governor wants. That's not our job here. I also will not, at the request of the sponsor of this bill, not vote for this bill should it even get into third reading, because as she relayed, there are issues that need to be addressed. And I'm not so casual and easy to roll over to say, oh, let's give them $1 million. Why not? Why don't we make it $5 million? 10, 20? My goodness, look at the hospital. Why don't we make it $5 million? Look at their patient information system. $5 million, and what do they say instead of, oh my goodness, who's responsible for misspending $5 million of the people's money in the hospital that has so many other needs? Is anything being done about that? Who's responsible for that procurement? Just like the procurement of the air conditioners that didn't have an electrical plug to plug into. Who's responsible for that procurement? And then they come back and say, next sentence, oh, we need to, 20 to maybe $60 million to get a proper system in place. And is anyone held responsible for misspending that $5 million of the people's money? Oh, we don't talk about that. Certainly didn't mention that in the State of the Island address. We didn't touch on any of those issues. So when you look at those type of things, those very big missteps and mistakes that are happening in this government, and we're just tripping over ourselves because the governor wants $1 million without review, without proper review, let's give it to her. I have to say no, be it this governor or any other governor. This is not the responsible action to take. Perhaps there is a need to increase the amount, but I certainly don't think it's to $1 million. And I think this requires further review. And with that, Madam Speaker, I'm going to object should this bill move forward, and I certainly will not vote for it at this time. Thank you.
On the bill, is there any senator who'd like to be recognized on the bill? Senator Fisher, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Madam Speaker. The question here is the proper scope of the consideration of the bill. I'm heartened to hear people rise and say, I support the bill or don't support the bill. That is particularly and completely within the right of the body. I look at the call to special session, and I note that the governor said to us, she wanted us, well, she says, I call this special session for the sole purpose of the 37th Guam Legislature's consideration and vote. She didn't say or, it's conjunctive, and vote. And that means vote it down or vote it up, one of the two. But I just emphasize that the language she used that brings us into the body is she wants us to consider and vote on what she sent. I believe that the letter is restrictive in nature, describes what we can do and we cannot do. That's why I understand that there might be some room for argument here, but the idea of actually amending the bill the governor votes, I have a very restricted view of the authority to act, and I believe that because of the call says consider and vote, that those are the choices before us. If we were to, for example, submit a standalone bill that said, not within the call, that said let's bring it down to 500,000, we certainly wouldn't be able to do that. We have to consider the bill that the governor sent. I look at the Organic Act for authority for this position, and I'm specifically referring to 48 U.S. Code 1423H. It's quite short. It refers to the existence of special, regular and special sessions, and the last two sentences says, this is our Constitution, of course. It says, no legislation shall be considered at any special session other than that specified in the call, therefore, or in any special message by the governor to the legislature while in such session. All sessions are open to the public, of course. But in his...
Ma'am, I rise to a point of order. We've had 5 special sessions in this 37th legislative term, and it's my recollection that we've amended and moved in every way that we usually do in the regular sessions for all of those special sessions. So I just rise for that point of order, and I further object to the
Point of order is noted. Thank you,
Senator's willingness to limit our ability to debate and discuss these bills in the People's House.
Thank you. Senator Fisher, you have the floor.
Thank you, ma'am. And just, I guess, as an aside to my friend's comment, this is not us acting unilaterally to restrict our ability. This is the people of Guam acting in concert who have restricted our ability because of the laws we have passed. And, we have to play by the rules. But anyway, just to read that again, no legislation shall be considered at any special session other than that specified in the call, therefore. That's the Constitution. Those are the rules. Now, many of us, I think, have referred to and are familiar with Mason's manual. I believe it's chapter 5 of our standing rules. It says if there's an ambiguity, we look to Mason's manual to see if we can resolve it. And when I look at Mason's Manual, Section 780, calls for special sessions, sub 9, it says, when the Constitution, our Constitution, prohibits passage of legislation not included in the governor's call, legislation passed at a special session not within the call is not valid, even if it is subsequently signed by the governor. So I think that that at least offers credence to my position that we should read this Constitution and we should read the governor's call restrictively. I fully embrace that many of the colleagues don't like the bill and will vote it down. That is absolutely appropriate, absolutely, if that is their bent. But it is not for us at this point, at a regular session, of course. I think my friend has a point that we could amend and move and change and do anything we want in a regular session because those are our bills. This is a special session that we are called to consider the bills of the governor, the head of a co-equal branch. This is pursuant to rules we have adopted. This is pursuant to the Constitution we have adopted. So, ma'am, I guess I would join my colleagues, and I think somebody used the word caution earlier, and I would join that, but the caution that I would urge upon the body is restraint and adherence to the law. Thank you very much, ma'am.
Point of information, Madam Speaker.
Please state your point of information.
I concur somewhat with the retiring speaker. However, the governor has called us into this special session on bills that are motions of this body. Normally, when the governor calls a special session, when the governor wants to do something, the governor drafts their own legislation or calls us in perhaps on a budget that the governor doesn't agree with what disposition that we've made and calls us into session on those bills that she has changed. There's nothing that's been done to this motion. As far as I'm concerned, Madam Speaker, and we can ask our legal counsel, this motion belongs to this body because it is introduced and duly read and heard now in 2 readings of this legislature. So I believe that this bill is still the prerogative of the author. In fact, I've heard some members say maybe the author should withdraw the bill.
Senator, your point of information is well noted. Thank you.
Well, I just want to make this point because if others in this body believe that the author could even withdraw the bill, then what's the difference in the motion between referring it back to committee or withdrawing? That means that some people in this body believe that the author still has possession and this body still has possession of the bill, and it's not the governor's bill. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator. On the bill.
On the motion, Speaker Tulai, you are recognized.
Just a point of order. There is no motion yet. That's still pending. I just want to make a point of order to the previous speaker that the Organic Act, yes, does allow the governor to call us into special session at when, in her opinion, the public interest may require it. No legislation shall be considered at any special session other than that specified in the call. I have not heard any motions to consider any legislation other than that in the call. So I don't think the citation to the Organic Act is relevant to our discussions here. We are trying, there were previous motions to move this bill, do different things with it. And that is really, I would like to raise a point of order to that as well. Our rules allow us, and this is under Rule 1.02C2A, I read this earlier, under special session agendas, it says no bill or resolution may be introduced or placed on the agenda, special session agenda at any special session called by Magahagan Guahan unless it relates to the subject matter of the call of the special session. No one is making any attempt to add on any other items to this agenda. The rules which apply to regular sessions shall apply to special sessions to the extent that they do not conflict with the Organic Act provision requiring the body only address the legislation provided by Magahagan Guahan. A regular session may not be conducted during a special session or recess thereof. I also read earlier, I'm just going to read again for those who are listening in case they got confused by the previous speaker, that our Mason's Manual also, this is, Mason's Manual shows us parliamentary procedure across the nation in Congress. It also addresses special sessions and says, while a legislature cannot go beyond the business specified in a call for special session, yet within such limits, it can act freely, in whole or in part, or not at all. I'm repeating myself and taking time to do that, but I just don't like it when the public has to listen to what really is not relevant to our debate today. The debate is, we are on a bill. No one in here has made a motion to place it on third. No one seems to want to do that. We've heard objections to it, but yet we've declined motions to move it someplace, back to the committee for further discussion, which is a very relevant motion because the bill in front of us, and I think we should all look at the bill in front of us. The bill is to change what is currently in statute requiring the Attorney General to review contracts over $500,000. That's what the law currently says. And the AG said yesterday they have no problem. They're going to review contracts over $500,000 as to form, legality, and whether the procurement law was followed. This bill that the governor wants us to pass has nothing to do with whether the Attorney General has declined to act. They want to use this emergency crisis that we are in to say, let's remove from the Attorney General's authority altogether the ability to review contracts up to $1 million. I'm sure there are arguments for and against that notion. The issue for me is today, that's not the crisis that we are in. The crisis is not that, oh my, the Attorney General has to review contracts less than $500,000. No, that's not the crisis. In fact, we might even look at it the reverse. As one of the previous speakers said, we're talking about we, senators, have been privy to all the audits. We have seen contracts between $500,000 and $1 million that maybe if the Attorney General did not review, would have come out differently. I personally want his review at this point. I support the law that requires the Attorney General to review contracts. I think that's a protection for the taxpayers of Guam. I am not willing to remove that. I don't think this emergency calls for that. We shouldn't even be wasting any time on that. I'm surprised the governor sends that down as that's the most urgent thing that we should do. She put it first. Before taking care of agencies that don't have any counsel, she wants us to take care of her and make sure that she can contract $1 million without the Attorney General even reviewing that. That doesn't make sense to me. That doesn't address a crisis. That is a grab for something using this crisis as a pretense. There's nothing in the Organic Act that says we have to vote on that bill, move it to third reading. We have all the right to move it wherever we want. That's what decades of legislatures before us have done. So I'm sorry if you need to review the record on that. I'm not really sorry. Go review the record on that. We were, just to refresh some of my colleagues' memories, just in an emergency session yesterday. The emergency call was very, very clear. We were going to address power capacity at GPA and, quote, additionally, the urgent matter of the Attorney General's withdrawal from legal representation of Government of Guam departments and agencies in which the OAG has active criminal or civil investigations has resulted in a threat to the welfare of the people of Guam. I would like to get back to that. That was in my call to session as Speaker on February 29th. Sent to all senators by email prior to the session. In fact, prior to the weekend before the session, prior to the holiday before the session, so that they could all know exactly what we were going to discuss yesterday. I passed it out on the floor. I read it into the record. And yet, I was transparent and direct, yet some of my colleagues said, we were not here to talk about the crisis of the Attorney General. Removing counsel from agencies. The governor's office, after my colleagues refused to continue yesterday and discuss the crisis, the governor's office released a press release suggesting that the emergency session was held, quote, unquote, unprecedented, and, quote, under the guise of considering an emergency Guam Power Authority bill. No, the call laid out two emergencies very clearly. Their press release described it that the legislature pulled a bait and switch tactic. Maybe the governor didn't read my call to session that clearly, or at least her press release people. Maybe they didn't see our attempt for hours to clarify from the Attorney General what part of this crisis is resolved and what part still remains. I was surprised at that press release last night. After all the hard work over the weekend, trying to draft bills to make them very specific, get the information out of the Attorney General as to what he's doing, what he's not doing, what these agencies are left without. I was here listening, but I was very surprised. Because the governor, I was surprised by that press release because the governor highlighted in her State of the Island address on March 5th. Yesterday was March 7th. She highlighted that this was a crisis involving the Attorney General. She said, and I quote, "Left unresolved, critical departments will lack the basic legal guidance they need to operate," unquote. She even cited a phone call with me, agreeing that this, quote, paralyzing move by the Attorney General's office would be disastrous for the people, unquote. She said, and I quote, "Madam Speaker, I am counting on your leadership in this body to help us resolve this serious issue," unquote. Maybe her press release team forgot what she said in the State of the Island address. And obviously, they didn't get to my colleagues through that address or any time throughout our emergency session, because my colleagues, many of them, were convinced there was no crisis. I called her yesterday. I let her know. You have some senators down here who do not believe that you have a crisis on your hands, that the government has a crisis on its hands, that the agencies need any help, and that we should act today. They don't want us. They refuse to allow us to move to motions to put on the exact bills that now the governor has conveniently sent down in this call for a special session. The exact same bills that we were trying to move to motions yesterday, not good enough for my colleagues, are now on our agenda for special session, with an additional one, the one to grab the $1 million, or to remove from the AG reviews of contracts from $500,000 to $1 million. This is perplexing to me. At the end of the governor's State of the Island address, do you remember her giving me the flowers and saying, "Let's work together in the spirit of cooperation and diplomacy"? Well, I was working very hard, but there were many people in here working against resolving any crisis. And I don't think that press release helped us to resolve any crisis. I don't think any senators got the message in here that your agencies need help. Some of my colleagues even said, "These things are not necessary. Let's wait for the court decision. Why are we continuing to talk?" They told me, the senators told me yesterday, wait for a public hearing. That would take 5 days to notice, a committee report, who knows what else. Treat it like it's regular because we have no crisis. Or some senators repeated that one sentence that the AG said in the hours of testimony that the Attorney General gave us. They repeated that he was going to review and sign the contracts. So in their minds, there was no crisis. I'm not sure if the governor heard that part either from the Attorney General, because she keeps talking about him refusing to sign contracts. He's very clearly stated on the record he's going to sign the contracts. So that's no longer our crisis. Our crisis is legal advice to agencies. That was made very clear yesterday for anyone who was in attendance. He said, he agreed with me, that the matter of the agencies being without representation should be addressed by a bill. Some senators don't see the legislature, perhaps, as I do, and maybe that's the fundamental philosophical difference that we have. I believe this is a body, last resort for the people of Guam when they are in need. A body that should be able to solve a crisis, not having to wait until they are told by the governor or the executive branch or the judiciary what they need to do. We could have done that yesterday, but I am willing to still do that today. And I just think, let's get to work. Let's get rid of this bill, 237, that we don't need right now. That doesn't help these agencies. That only helps agencies that don't want their contracts reviewed by the Attorney General of Guam. Whether you like him or not, they want their contracts to be reviewed only by their agencies. I would suggest, if we look through all these audits, the auditor is citing the agencies for failure to follow the procurement law. Guam Memorial Hospital, $4 million question costs. GITA, $1 million at least in the matrix contract question costs. DOE, so many. So I asked my colleagues, let's just move on. Let's get to the bills that will resolve the actual crisis that we have, and that is the one where the Attorney General has withdrawn as counsel from 22 agencies. I believe those agencies need counsel. I think the governor believes that too. And she should have just limited her call to that, but she didn't. So now we're trying to spend time getting rid of this Bill 237. So, thank you, Madam Speaker. We're on Bill 237-37. Vice Speaker, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to speak on this bill. And you know, the beauty about this august body is literally when a bill is presented before us, Madam Speaker, we can either vote the bill up or vote the bill down. And instead of throwing disparaging marks about each other or sharing personal feelings of what can be, what is being done in reference to how they feel about someone's legislation as introduced or as amended or as substituted, we on this august body can make that decision to vote on the bill presented before us on this august body up or down. And based on the information that was presented in these last couple of days, I did say those remarks that were quoted just earlier because the Attorney General himself admitted there's no need for us to be in here. And I too, Madam Speaker, have a concern. Like my previous speaker, I may not have agreed with someone from Talafofo, but I definitely agree with someone from Jigo. So with that being said, Madam Speaker, I'll take the motion, I'll stand, And this bill needs to be voted on because it was presented before us. So on the motion, there will be a motion. I present the motion on Bill 237? 237-37 COR. I'll move it to the third reading voting file. There is an objection.
Thank you. On the motion, there's been an objection on the motion to place bill number 237-37 COR to the voting file. All in favor, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Motion fails. We're on bill number 254-37 COR as...
Madam Speaker, what is the vote count? What is the vote count, Madam Speaker?
There were 5 in favor, I think. Let me confirm with the clerk.
Can you count that again? Because I thought I counted 7 or 8, Madam Speaker.
There were 6 in favor. Motion fails.
Madam, on a motion to reconsider the vote.
All right. There's been a motion to reconsider the vote. Is there any objection? There's an objection. So all in favor of reconsidering the vote, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Motion to reconsider fails. So we proceed on second reading to bill number 254-37 COR. All right, we're on bill number 254-37 COR substituted on the floor. Senator Shelton, you are recognized. Senator Shelton, you are recognized on Bill 254-37 as substituted on the floor.
Seduis Masi, Madam Speaker. I'd like to move the bill to third reading and ask for time to discuss.
Please proceed on discussion.
Seduis Masi, Madam Speaker.
Ma'am, I rise for the reason of making a motion. I'd like to resolve into the committee of the whole.
Sorry. She has the floor. Senator Shelton, you're recognized.
I yield to Senator Fisher.
Temporarily yield. Thank you very much, Senator.
Yielding your time?
No, I'm sorry, I'm yielding. He has a
motion.
You have the floor, Senator. You can make a motion on his turn to speak.
Yeah, go ahead and make the motion, Amanda.
Seduis Masi, Madam Speaker and colleagues, over the last several days we heard lots of discussion from the Attorney General and his team and letters back and forth, press releases that have brought us to this point today in the governor's call to session. We know that a notice was given by the Attorney General that over 20 executive branch agencies and instrumentalities of the government of Guam that he has elected to temporarily withdraw from providing legal services to, and that includes the processing of any documents requesting the Attorney General's signature. We're hearing today from different agencies that they are delivering documents, contracts to the Attorney General's office that are being sent back to them, pushed back, and referencing this letter of his temporary withdrawal from any service to be provided to these agencies that may be under investigation. This decision impacts our critical agencies and their documents, including procurement documents and contracts. And while I acknowledge and respect the Attorney General's claims, he claims his decision is intended to avoid any ethical violation until the courts resolve this issue related to violations of the Guam Rules of Professional Conduct. And I believe that immediate action on this bill, Bill 254-37 as substituted, is critical to avoiding interruption of critical public services. Now we're also hearing threats that we could lose additional federal funding and grants that agencies are banking on. Federal program managers are waving red flags at us today to bring to our attention that we have money at risk that our government cannot afford to lose. The executive branch, Madam Speaker, has also stated publicly that the Attorney General's decision adversely impacts procurement review, included but not limited to contracts for Guma Manasi Foster Care Group Home, GovGuam Health Insurance, the procurement of Simon Sanchez, GDOE school repairs, various DPW projects, and more. With the legislative oversight over youth and senior citizens, I find it necessary that we examine any and all policy options before us today that are available to move our procurement activities forward so that services for our most vulnerable citizens and for our entire government of Guam, banking on these critical services, our community that relies on our service, that we can continue this without interruption. Accordingly, Bill 254-37 as substituted is necessary to amend applicable sections of Guam law to ensure that government procurement proceed without undue delay and to help Guam's residents, property, and operations secure from this significant threat. This bill provides the ways and the means for the vital review, sign-off, function to continue while the underlying reasons that put the government in this situation are ironed out. Madam Speaker, what we do not want is for services and procurement that are considered vital to the well-being of our people and island to remain in limbo any longer than necessary. I know we all share that common hope for our community. I look forward to the discussion, to any amendments to be made to this bill to strengthen this bill and help us move forward as a body so that we can avert a crisis that we as policymakers know may be devastating across government agencies and the critical public services they provide to families and our broader island community. Sidious Masi, Madam Speaker.
Sidious Masi, Senator. On that motion to place the bill on third reading, is there any other senator who'd like to be recognized? Any senator who'd like to be recognized on the motion to place the bill on third reading? Senator Perez, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So this bill is identical to the one that was sent to the Speaker, I believe it was 2 days ago, or might have been yesterday. And so I had a chance to review the bill, and what it seems to be doing is doing more than address the lack of representation of the AG. What it's doing, it's trying to create two systems, bifurcate the procurement system into a decentralized and a centralized system. And so which hasn't had a public hearing. And I think those elements really need a public hearing. So what I believe is that in order to address the lack of representation, I think that the amendments to this bill should really reinstate the original law and only include elements where legal representation is needed. So it does include things like increasing the threshold to $1 million. It includes, basically it's doing more than just addressing this emergency. So I proffered some amendments to that end to restore the law, but only leave in the parts where legal representation may be lacking, and at that point, the agency is authorized to employ or contract an attorney to provide legal services. So I do believe I sent it to the clerks. No? If I can get a moment's recess, or unless while we're uploading that, we can have other senators talk as well. I'm okay with that too as well.
We'll take a 1-minute recess to get the amendments passed out. We're back from recess. Senator Perez, you have the floor.
It's Masi, Madam Speaker. So this amendment, the first amendment I'd like to proffer is on page 3, line 11 to 24. And so basically repeals what's there and just puts in the original language, which was, I think, 3 lines. But then it includes in case the Office of Attorney General withdraws from representation. So it states, all contracts shall, after approval of the Attorney General, be submitted to the Governor for his signature. All contracts of whatever nature shall be executed upon the approval of the Governor. And this is what's additional, what's different in what's in current statute. If the Office of the Attorney General formally withdraws from representation of the agency executing the contract, the agency shall be authorized to submit the contract to the Governor for the Governor's signature upon approval of the contract by an attorney employed or contracted by the agency to provide legal services. So again, really it's to address the issue if, in case an agency lacks legal representation, we want to make sure that they have a legal representation to ensure these contracts move forward. So I ask for my colleagues' support. Thank you.
On the amendment, is there anyone? Senator Fisher, on the amendment, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move to adjourn, subject to the call of the Speaker.
There's a motion to adjourn subject to the call of the Speaker. Is there an objection? There's an objection. All in favor, please raise your hand. You got it? That motion carries. I guess no urgency here. Sis Masi colleagues, we're adjourned.